Welcome to the Embodied Dialogues podcast. I'm your host, Jan Winhall, creator of the Felt Sense Polyvagal model and the FSPM Institute. Here in this experiential space, we explore intersections of trauma healing, addiction recovery, and nervous system science, helping us embody the theories that we are creating, sharing, and challenging. Thank you for listening. Join our live audience at janwinhall.com. Today, we're joined by my friend, meditation teacher, and author, Jeff Warren. First, let's slow down and come into a brief embodied practice together. If it feels okay, just slowly bringing your attention somewhere down into the center of your body. And just noticing where you are inside, how safe you feel in your body. A nice little invitation to slow things down a little bit. Ah, yeah. The wisdom of the pause. So we're going to be really exploring today this kind of rich conversation about working with the felt sense inside the body and with meditation. Just notice what happens inside when we're with all of that. Being in this beautiful community where we really advocate for the body. We really befriend our body. And then just slowly coming back, bringing yourself back into the room, into being together. And you might want to just kind of take a look to see who's here and who you know and who you don't know. And if it feels okay to send a friendly kind of hello, a nice smile, cues of safety, as Steve Porges would say to each
What's up,
other.
Jeffrey? Long time no see, buddy.
Ah, nice.
I see a whole bunch of friends here.
Nice. Good. Me too. Beautiful. And you can put in the chat where you are. That's always fun. So here we are.
Can you see me?
Yeah. Can you
hear me?
see me?
Okay. Yeah, you're big in my screen. Full screen. And I see all these friends of mine here. It's sweet. Yeah. Old
Yeah.
friends. Old
Yeah.
friends too.
Oh,
Talking
friends
about,
too.
yeah, amazing.
Nice. Yeah. Okay. Well, and what's exciting for you right now? I know you've got lots of great projects going on, as you always do. But for those of people that don't know much about who you are, share with us what's going on for Jeff Warren these days.
Well, I mean, a lot. Primarily,
Yeah.
I'm a dad of two young kids. So my
Well,
partner
that'll be
Sarah
a
and I,
lot.
yeah, we have a 3-year-old and a 6-year-old. So that's kind of our, yeah, I was literally doing a version of Felt Sense this morning as my two boys were screaming at each other. I was like, okay, I do my usual practice around that. Because for me, it's like I'm being electrocuted on the inside. Like my wife, her
Mhm.
default in terms of her less healthy strategies, more of a kind of like freeze a little bit or more like have space to the when it gets dysfunctional, it's a little dissociative. Mine is more like it's all up in my system when they're because I'm so sensitive. So I have specific strategies I use around that. So
Yeah.
that's a big part of my life. But I'm
Yeah.
a teacher of meditation and mindfulness. Like I specialize
Yeah.
in making practices accessible to very different kinds of populations. I'm neurodivergent, so I talk a lot about my ADHD and my bipolar I've had to figure out how to change, how to adjust my own mindfulness practice, and beyond
Mm,
that, just the kind of core skills of practice more broadly, and to figure out how they work for me. And I've learned a lot about that. So I spend a lot of kind of very joyful time doing that. And I'm pretty broadly informed about like, trauma stuff because it's just so interesting to me. I feel like it's sort of articulating from a biological point of view, I guess, a lot of what, say, traditional Buddhism or Indian philosophy is talked about in different terms, but
yeah.
I see a lot of overlap. And so I spend a lot of time. I have a home base, a Substack called Home Base, where I offer kind of free meditations every week. I guess my big passion is what I would call the democratization of mental health. So helping everyone
Mm,
get connected to a practice and a support system, and it often involves community that kind of works for them
yeah.
and speaks to where they're at. And I have free kits I put out around that, like free PDFs people can download. I put a lot of free resources out on my Sunday night do nothing project on YouTube and my various meditations. I'm on Calm and 10% happier and blah 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 blah. Uh, and very relevant for our conversation here. Part of the reason I'm so excited about this is I know Jan very well, and she knows me very well because she is my former therapist. So back
Uh,
in the day, back in the dark old days, I think this is like 2008 or something, I think.
it's a long time
It
ago.
was a long time, almost 20 years.
Yeah,
I was
yeah.
going through a very hard time. I had
And you,
just
Jeff,
published
you used to come and sit here in this
I
room.
recognized the space.
Yeah.
I would come in and like the people would pass each other by in the hallways. We were shamefully we were in therapy. We didn't want other people to know we were in therapy. There was something kind of the taboo was still very much alive then. We would pass each other in the hallway, and someone would go out and I would come in. And at that time in my life, I had written my first big book about consciousness that came
Yeah.
out, and I was sort of free falling. I had really had thrown myself into meditation practice, and it was a support, but it also was creating interesting areas of dysregulation, which I'm no doubt we'll get into.
Yeah,
And
it's important.
I was broke and lost and struggling, and somehow I got connected to Jan Winhall, someone
How was that?
I think it was Patricia Pearson actually.
Oh, yeah, it was. It was.
Patricia Pearson, who's another great
Yeah,
writer.
that's right. A
She was
wonderful
like, "You
writer.
should connect to Jan." I was like,
Yeah,
"I'd love to, but I'm dead broke and I'm in free fall." And you were like, "You know what? After you met me, you said I'll see you for free, basically." And for like 2 or 3 years,
I did.
yo, yeah, you saw me. I didn't pay. I think I paid $20 a session, which was
Oh,
because I didn't have a penny to my name. I was in
mm,
major tailspins around mental health stuff, and then you
yeah,
also then convinced me to do the felt sense the training. So I
yeah,
did at least 2 years of training with you with our group where we learned felt sense, and I
yeah. You
got
did.
very deep into Gendlin's work, and
Hmm.
it became the whole episode. Not only did it course correct me from a mental health perspective and all kinds of ways we can talk about, but that the
Mm.
felt sense model became very central to how I started to, when I eventually, a few years later, started to teach meditation, it was very much at the center of how I thought about practice and still is very much at the center, although there's differences.
Yes,
So there's so much there that we can unpack. And since we have a personal connection, it's extra
we
interesting. And I'm also
do.
happy to talk about all of my neurotic, neurodivergent trauma because,
But you know what else we went through, which
Mhm.
was really powerful, right? Was the death of someone that
Oh
was
yeah.
very dear to
Yeah.
us, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Marlene.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, she was
Yeah.
also, yeah, thank you for saying it. She was a central part of this. You introduced me to Marlene.
Hmm.
She became my ADHD coach and helped me put
Yeah.
structures in place that to this day
Yeah.
are are very much how I structure my life, and also saw me for completely for free. So I had the two of you. And then when she died, it was,
Terrible.
yeah, that was, yeah, it's a, it's funny talking about it now, going back to that. I remember seeing you at her funeral, at her service, and it might have been one of the last times I saw you actually in person.
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah. Boy, oh boy. I remember the emails that you sent me after that. And yeah, it's a powerful thing, isn't it? When, you share a grief.
Yeah.
It's a really powerful it bonds you.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
No question.
yeah. So, you said something just before we came on air, actually, about how you had a meditation practice, but what you were experiencing at the time that you came to see me, there was something about needing something more or different to help you with what
Yes.
you were. So, I think it would be really great for our audience if you could share something about, because often people think focusing is meditation, and focusing isn't meditation.
No, there's a lot of overlap,
There
but
is overlap, especially step one,
yeah.
right? In clearing a space. But focusing, Jenlyn found focusing through working with people who had problems and wanted to basically be with those problems in a way that it could be resourceful and helpful.
Yes. Well, this is a very rich thing to discuss, and maybe
I know.
I'll set it up by just offering a framework for how I think about it,
Yeah,
for
please
how I
do.
think about the nature of the healing that happens in meditation, and maybe the nature of the healing that happens through
Great. I
focusing.
love this.
And you can,
Yeah, yeah,
add to that obviously because it'll
yeah,
be limited. But I see, so first of course, there are many kinds of meditation techniques that
yeah.
have different intentions, that do different things, or different kinds of trainings. But if you're talking about mindfulness in particular, and
Yeah,
I'm very influenced by my main teacher here is a guy named Shinzen Young, and he
yeah,
really spoke about mindfulness as this sort of cultivation of a three-part attentional skill set. So you're building up, in his view, and I agree, you're building up concentration, which is the capacity to choose what you want to pay attention to direct your attention and
yeah,
begin to kind of commit. You're cultivating clarity, which is more kind of resolution in the inner world, more very much like focusing does, like getting clear about what's happening in experience. And finally, you're cultivating equanimity, which is
mm,
the kind of super juice to all of the. You're also cultivating care and compassion, these things, but the equanimity is really the non-attachment. It's the not pushing and pulling, the being with something without
mm,
needing to push it away or check out from it. And it is the very quality of building a window of tolerance that we talk about in trauma therapy, like more capacity to be with more kinds of intensities, with
yeah,
having ever more space. So the direction of healing in a meditation practice, in a very general sense, is the whatever's coming up in the in the figure, say a figure ground relationship, whatever intensity of conditions internally, conditions externally are happening, you are learning to, via equanimity, to cultivate ever more sense of presence so that you're less and less dysregulated by that and more able to stay there with it. And mostly it happens sort of through a trickle down process. Every day you come and you sit in your practice, you develop a little bit more equanimity, a little bit more concentration. It trickles down, it begins to open things up, to shift things. And there can be a sense in which things are clearing out. You feel like it's almost like, to use your language, the body begins to reorganize itself in more adaptive ways. And I really think that's true. And you may come out of a session and realize you're just generally less reactive around this person, and there can be dramatic shifts, not only dramatic falling aways of traumatic patterns where they just get integrated in a way without even you having to specifically work directly on them. There can,
yes,
of course, there are the more profound shifts associated with the practice where even your sense of a self in here and a world out there, it turns out that's something else that can be seen with concentration, clarity, and equanimity. And as that starts to erode, your capacity to feel connected to life, to act on your own kind of deepest intuitions, all of that grows, your own creativity. So, I mean, that's a very general, broad sense. It happens in different ways for different people. But I would say that's a kind of overview of, say, and then what is the intention of, say, a Buddhist practice is to diminish suffering and increase fulfillment, really. And it sends you into a kind of path of healing that is ultimately still quite mysterious. Like there are stages that are recognizable, but it's so unique and quirky and dependent on the person. Now, what happens when we sit and get present with our stuff? Well, it comes to meet us. Here it is. Here, hello. We're not a
hello.
blank slate. We got all this history. We got all this stuff.
Yeah.
And sometimes in the slow march of perspective that increases through practice, we find we have the capacity to be with that stuff. Other times it's too intense. And it may be that the direct skills of meditation that you're trying to apply in that moment, they're just not enough. You do not have capacity. And that's what
Mm,
happened with me. Like I experienced a ton of deep healing at the beginning. First few years of my practice were more of a sense of presence, being available, more like I never knew how much noise there was in my system until it
Yeah.
started to get quiet. And that is profound.
Yes.
And then,
Yeah.
as if I had exfoliated the top layers,
Yeah.
here comes the boogeyman.
Yeah.
Here comes all the gnarly stuff, the shame, the agony, the
Yeah.
pain, the dysregulation. And it was, I did not have enough capacity to be with that on my own.
Mm.
And my teacher at the time, his advice, the classic meditation advice, is a version of this: just recycle the reaction. Whatever intensity is coming through, just bring equanimity, pardon me, concentration and clarity to it. And eventually you can use that as the new meditation object and you'll develop that much more capacity. Easy to say if you're not bipolar, my friend. Easy to say if you're not ADHD. Easy to say if you don't have a lot of trauma.
Right.
Much harder to do in practice. So what I
Right.
found is I needed, like, I think of the trickle down approach of meditation in contrast to a more directed and targeted, like, let's actually work with this pattern. Let's look at it. You can do that in meditation. Pardon me. You can use like Tara Brach's rain, you can work with specific things, but to do it with someone, another human being who's attuning to you, who you're attuned to, that collectively expands the bandwidth of our capacity to socially meet this thing, the safety you feel, of course, because you're also healing your relations to other people. So you have this, in my case, I had you who could sit with me as this compassionate person who could direct me into working specifically with the pattern as it's coming up. Like, I needed that. And I think that even for meditators who may not specifically need that, pardon me, I got this chest thing.
That's okay. Take your time.
Because I'm getting excited talking about it. Even for meditators who may
Yeah.
not specifically need that, you can go deep in a meditation practice. You can address all kinds of core suffering. But if you don't acknowledge your shadow, your stuff, it may not cause you suffering in the way it used to, but you can bet it'll displace your suffering onto other people. And then you have the classic acting out in a spiritual, there's different words for it.
Bypassing.
The
Bypassing, you mean?
bypassing.
Yeah.
Yeah, you bypass your own stuff and it ends
Yeah.
up being,
Yeah.
comes back to bite you later on.
Yeah. And
And
those folks, Jeff, when people are at that place and they come into my focusing trainings, they have a really tough time because they expect as meditators, focusing is going to be like a piece of cake. And then they're the ones that really get challenged and scared. Yeah.
absolutely, because it's like, first of all, it challenges their ideal of the perfect meditator and whatever
Yeah.
spiritual attainment they've achieved, which is all kind of ridiculous, cul-de-sacs on the path. And then, like you said, they may never have gone into those specific things, and those activations are huge.
They're huge. Yeah.
My working definition of trauma as a meditator, like I'm saying, from the point of view of like the phenomenology, like the experience of trauma, my experience of trauma is that which seems to come out of nowhere. Like, I'm fine, I'm regulated, I'm in this, like, I have a sense of an easy presence in the world, and then my son is screaming at me or freaking out, and all of a
Yeah.
sudden it's like flashbacks of my own stuff I dealt with as a kid. It's like I'm no longer in touch with my body. I'm immersed in his drama. I have like literally intrusive thoughts of doing violence to my son, of things that have been done to me. Like, I'm hijacked by this limbic
Yes.
thing, and it's like I'm trapped inside this new world.
Yeah.
And that to me is like trauma when it comes out of nowhere and you're
Yep. Yep.
inside the experience of it. And then what do you
Yeah.
do?
We used to call that fresh frozen.
Mm.
Yeah, these triggers, because they're frozen in time, but they're fresh when they're touched.
Yes, and it feels like being re-traumatized.
Yeah, well,
It,
it is. It
yeah,
is. Yeah.
yeah. And that's despite whatever meditation or focusing practice you may have had.
Mm.
This stuff is still so for me, I got to a point in my own journey where I was like, okay, there are some major things here, and then the neurodivergent aspect is a whole other level. And of course, neurodivergent folks often have a lot more trauma. So I had
Yeah.
both those things. So there's stuff I need to address in a different way. And I did do, and I continue to have done, although I'd say that I'm at a very different place with it now, 20 years later, not just
Yeah.
through the work I've done with you, but other trauma therapists. And I have a completely different relationship to my trauma now that I used to have. And it's part of what I teach.
Mhm. Yeah. So maybe we can break that down a little bit more. So how you use in your own experiencing the shifting from the meditation practice into the focusing practice of coming into and being with these fresh frozen trauma places.
Yeah, sure. Well, first of all, I don't even use categories anymore, honestly, of
Yeah.
this is mindfulness, this is
Yeah.
compassion, this
But I
is
think
felt
it's
sense,
help,
this
but
is,
it's I
it
know what
is.
you mean, but I think for people when especially when we're trying to teach it.
Totally. No, I'm
Yeah.
happy to do it that way, but I'm just saying
Yeah.
it's like I just have my practice, and the right
Yeah.
practice is the one that works for me, and
Yeah,
this
yeah.
is what it looks like. I can give you a different, I mean, I have so many, but I could give you the one I do when I'm in the middle of the shitstorm, and then I can give you the
Okay.
one I do as a more general
Okay.
one because they all both involve focusing. The general one looks like when I can do my daily practice, I sit down, I close my eyes to start. I often, for me, it's like from the beginning, I make it about something larger than me. So I connect to, I ask for support. I feel the sense of a lineage connection of my mentors. Like I really am deliberate about about connecting out that way, and it puts me in a position of sort of it's an instant equanimity inducer. It makes me more humble, more kind of available. And then
Beautiful.
I usually do something where I'm like, I do a very focusing question. I say to myself, what's here now that I didn't realize was here? What's here
Beautiful.
now that I didn't realize is here? Sort of like my check-in.
I
And
love
even
that.
before I start with a settling or a breath or a mantra or something that settles the system, I like to just do a kind of snapshot. And inevitably, as I sit, what's in my something comes forward. Always something. Could be so many things. There's a subtle mood, a sense of energetic excitement. Like if I'm doing it right now, I can feel, ooh, I love talking about this stuff. There's excitement in my chest. Sometimes there's like a sadness or a fixation, a quality I want to prove myself, or I've got to get to somewhere. I have an expectation and
Mm.
some subtle dysregulation, whatever it is. Always something. I just notice it. I let it be there. I kind of like, now, unlike focusing, I almost always experience a felt sense right away because it's so fast now. But I kind of feel into what's there. I notice it. I notice it's usually an energetic quality of the body, but it could be memory, an
Hmm.
intuition, a feeling, all the different, uh, you know, felt sense things. I don't usually go into it too much. Sometimes I do though. If there's a big thing there, then I'll do literally felt sense with myself. I'll go, oh, interesting. So what's this all about?
So if
Uh,
there's a big thing there,
mhm.
that would be a criteria for spending more time in
Yes,
it in a felt
that would
sense
be
way.
definitely.
So that's important for people to know, right?
Yeah.
Oh, that's where I can really start. If you're a meditator, really start to notice if there's a big thing there that might be a valuable place to spend some time.
Yeah, well, so I would
Yeah.
say again, this is really important. Like there's different you could think of meditation, it's like you begin a practice, it's like you're in this atrium and there are like four or five doors leading in different directions and each is a different kind of path. So just to give two
Hmm.
very simple doors, one, it's completely legit. My teacher taught me like almost the first rule of practice is like focus towards or focus away. Like where do you want to put your attention? And it's a legitimate strategy to focus away. So a
Mm-hmm.
lot of meditators, I think, have stuff there, but they go, you know what? I've learned how to create stability in my experience. I'm going to focus on this sense of a resource, of calmness, and I'm going
Yeah.
to let this other stuff be there and slowly fade away. And they
Yeah.
get ever more stable and grounded. And that is a deep, real, valuable practice. That
Yes.
stability radiates out. They go back into their day. They're able to find that composure more. However, they never really actively dealt with this thing. It could be that indirectly the qualities that you're cultivating through the settling will address that. But my attitude is more like, hey, if this is sitting at the top layer of the nervous system, why wouldn't I look
Mm-hmm.
at it and work
You,
to.
I think just to interrupt there for a
Mhm.
sec, I think there's something there too that's really important about addiction.
Mm,
So
mm,
there's ways that sometimes in
yeah.
recovery, people will
Yeah.
spend a lot of time on that first path of, we could say it's like clearing space and focusing,
Mm,
the mindfulness piece of it, where we're getting
mm,
the right amount of distance to be able to stabilize or find more ventral
mm,
energy in the body, we would say
mhm.
in polyvagal theory. But the problem with that, I think you're saying, and I think this relates to addiction process, is that if you don't also go into that place and learn how to be comfortable enough to be with it in there, that's where we can relapse.
Yes. I
And
couldn't
and then
not agree
people
more.
go into those cycles and then they're like, why am I doing this again?
Yeah,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
there's a absolutely one-on-one perfect an analog in meditation, and it has to do with these concentration and bliss states that you can get very good at developing. In a sense, you're like endogenously releasing your own opioids. They're called the
Yeah.
jhanas. You can get into these deep blissful states, and the traditional criticism about those states from within Buddhism is that, yeah, they're great for stability, but it's not unlike, say, taking a drug that gives you a temporary thing. They're
Right.
not going to address the core issues, and that you need an actual more insight practice to both to address these trauma layers we're talking about, and also to work on ultimately these deeper, the kind of whole constructed nature of experience that deep practice is pointing itself to. So I agree with you. You
Mm.
end up avoiding those things, and you end up in a very similar kind of, you could say, a kind of addiction cycle. And um, yeah, that's so
So do
interesting.
you so Jeff, would you say that in the meditation world, is this idea that we're talking about now, is this radical? Or is it
Uh,
kind of understood and accepted and part of
Well, I think honestly, because of the work of people like Peter Levine
mm,
and Judith Herman and
Bessel?
now Basil and yourself and Stephen Porges, I think that now anytime you're doing a kind of training and learning mindfulness meditation, there's going to be a section on what we can learn from trauma therapy. I mean, embodied
Mm.
somatic trauma practice has become so hugely influential that almost
Yeah.
everyone is fluent in a kind of window of tolerance model, nervous system
Okay,
activation
good. That's
model.
wonderful.
So definitely when it comes to the mindfulness part, that I
Yeah.
think there's much more now in hardcore Buddhist circles where
Yeah.
that aren't like so much about teaching mindfulness or learning insight practice, that are more, I think there's still lots of dissociators and there's still lots of people who are not necessarily directly addressing those things. But I
Yeah.
do think it's changing. There's so much more literacy.
Yeah, it's wonderful, eh?
Yeah, yeah. It
Mm.
is. And anyway, there's so much here. But
I
even to go back to
know.
like, so you go in, I would go in and say, oh, there is something here.
Mm.
Now, what's my process for that? Because I've done a lot of work with focusing with you, I've done a lot of meditation on my own. I have specific ways I've learned of working that can very dramatically create shifts, like so much so that I'm often yawning and burping. And I can
Yeah.
go, I'll go right to the heart of where often I identify, oh, there's some strand of reactivity or way in which I'm trying to make this experience different. And it's got an emotional charge, it's got all this, and I just trace it. I trace it to the very beginning of it. What is the initial trigger of this in a way in my experience? Can I find the like where I
Yeah, the
believe it's
core.
the core, where I believe it's real? And it's usually like I'm identifying with it in some way. I think this is real. I think this is who I am in some way. And that's where my Buddhist practice is really helpful. I'm like, oh, but I don't exist in that way that I think I do. This is just the activity of the mind and body, the activity of me, but the place I'm aware from is empty of all that. And so this is kind of like a hybrid focusing and meditation practice. And then as soon as I do that, there's this almost always a dramatic shift where the pattern like begins to, that's where I'm yawning, tears, it just like all lets
Yeah,
go
that's the felt shift. And in what we would say that then you're accessing more of that ventral vagus.
big time.
Yeah, and that felt shift that Jenlin talked about that in my model brings together the nervous system.
Yes. So then
Yeah.
from that place,
Mm-hmm.
wow, now I'm in this place
Yeah.
that I can really go into meditation. So I've
Yeah.
cleared the space, similar to like a breath practice might clear the space,
Yeah.
different, but a similar kind of
Yeah.
thing. I feel this groundedness, this spaciousness, and then I might do a simple mantra or a breath or just be, and I feel the stability of that just continuing to deepen and broaden. And I begin to notice all these very, very, very subtle activations that are there in experience that I don't normally think of. I think of this as like the sound of the fridge, becoming aware of the sound of the fridge. You've been in the kitchen for the past 2 hours. You didn't even notice the sound of the fridge was on, but it's been humming in the background. Now it starts to go off. And that is a place of rich, rich inquiry. I don't know how much Felt Sense spends time there. It's like Felt Sense is such an active and dynamic process. This is an exploration of deep stillness and quiet and showing that there's so many subtle layers in our selfing and our identification process that are available for inquiry and inspection should we wish. And from
Yes.
that place, I often end up going into either like a non-dual inquiry or like a mindless one, or I just do nothing. I just surrender to it and I let the space work on me because I know that's the teacher here.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, I
yeah,
love that. And that would be more in Jenlin's experiencing scale down at level 6 and 7, where and you're right, there is a way in step 6 we call welcoming. And a lot of people in the community will say, we really need to like expand this because this is where so much of the goody stuff is.
that's the shit. And it
Yeah,
it just
yeah,
goes deeper and deeper. I mean,
yeah,
that's the mystery. You get into
yeah.
that. It's hard to even articulate. It's the essence of spirituality and the contemplative
Hmm.
insight of like, oh my gosh, the unity, the interconnection, the
Yeah,
quiet, the love. It's like it's all in there, and it's
yeah.
and it's not just some bland pablum thing.
No,
It could
no.
be very finely elaborated. There's details. Your
Yeah.
own stuff is,
And for those of
yeah,
us in the audience who know my fourth circle practice, and probably Robert is there, but this is the fourth circle, right? This is that really deep, that just such a gorgeous place.
gorgeous.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's the place of interconnectivity.
Yeah.
It's the place of deep service, those impulses, the
Yes.
naturalness of those impulses,
Yeah.
the sometimes I call it like being in contact with the stream. Like
Yeah.
what is the deep stream of intuitions about how to be in our life and what we're
Yeah,
here to
and
do. And
do you know Dan Siegel's work,
I
interpersonal
do, I
neurobiology? So
do.
this is the domain of integration around transpirational domain, I think he calls it. Yeah, he describes it quite nicely too. And I love the
Did
way
Gendlin talk about that?
he did. He did. Now, what was
Because he
the?
lived it. Like he
Yeah, he
was
lived it.
the living example of it.
Yeah, he did. He would often say things like, "We need to spend more time here," or "We need to not spend so much time there," or that kind of thing. Yeah,
Yeah, you
I'm
could
sure
just
we've
see
got.
that he
Have
was
we
in that
got like
stream.
lots of questions, Lisa, in the chat, and people that probably want to come up and share with you? And
Yeah,
because
there's a couple questions in the chat, and I know some people have hands raised.
should we go back, Jeff, to the main group? Because this is what we like to do: is
Of
like just
course.
yeah, let's
Yeah.
go and
And you
interact with
could guide me into
everybody.
some practice too and show everybody what a kook I am. By the way, we're gonna get Jan on the MindBot Adventure Pod.
We are
So,
next.
and
When is that?
I think it's in a
It's
couple weeks, and
booked.
you're gonna guide Tasha and myself into a felt sense practice. And I'm saying
Okay.
right now you're allowed to go into all my neurotic stuff that you know
Oh,
very well. I got no shame around it. Hey.
It's beautiful, though. That kind of transparency is part of what heals shame, right?
Mhm.
That's why I love it. Yeah. Okay, let's go back. I'm going to go to gallery view because I can see
okay.
people are really wanting to interact with you.
And
And
I've got,
where?
if I could ask the questions that came through the Q&A, just because there's a couple that have been in there for a while.
Okay.
And one thing just to notice is that someone is asking if we can just slow the pace of the conversation down a little bit. It's a lot of great
Really?
content.
I hear that a
Jeff,
lot.
that's why you get a recording. Jeff
Trying
doesn't
to fit
have
it all in.
ADD for no reason.
We'll replay it at 1.2, I don't know, like a point 0.8 time.
That's right, exactly. And feel free, that's a good reminder, you can turn on the closed captioning as well here. But so Jeff, you had mentioned some strategies for when you're right in that moment where you're maybe feeling stressed with your kids arguing or high energy. And so it's instead of entering that atrium and all the doors of meditation in this like kind of beautiful choice way, when you're in that moment and things are coming at you, could you give us maybe a strategy that works for you in there?
Absolutely. Well, how about I can dramatize one right now? So that comment about the slowing things down instantly got me reoriented to my inner experience, and I instantly noticed this excited, driven part of me that wants to just push harder, offer more. But also, what's that coming from? I can feel underneath it. There's a pressure. It's familiar to me as someone who's bipolar, like that, almost the
Mhm.
pressured speech of it, and I'm
Yeah.
familiar with what's under it. And so, what I do instantaneously in that moment, as soon as I heard that, I took a deep breath. I dropped into my body. I let it be there. Because I've done a lot of work, I can recognize that I can have compassion for it. I'm like, oh yeah, buddy, it's okay. It's all right. You got plenty of time. You got plenty of time. You're in a safe space. You don't need to show people that you're worth being, that you're okay. Yeah, I know where it's
Yeah.
come from. It's like, if I could just say enough words, I'll convince everybody that
Yeah.
I'm safe, that I'm a good person, And so, oh man, that's tender. So this is an in the moment practice. And just as soon as I feel that, first of all, the equanimity, I can feel it flooding back. So
Mhm.
it's like the pressured intensity part of it. Even I can feel in the way I'm relating, it's sort of slowing and softening. And well, I do a version of that even with my boy. So about the most intense thing I can imagine is what I basically had to go through as a parent with a neurodivergent kid and during COVID and the challenges and my own triggers and trauma, where he's a little bit PDA, pathological demand avoidance, and he's can get intensely fixated. So he would just be screaming, frozen in the middle of the stairs, won't go up, won't go down, causing his brother to scream, physically throwing, attacking things, smashing things, hurting himself, me. And I would be, that's about as intense a situation as I can imagine. Like I would be, and so what do I do in that situation? I know the ideal is to say, Dada's going to step away for a minute. Mama's going to come in here. And sometimes we're able to do that. And I'm able to take a break. I can see what's going on. But often I can't. Sarah's all up in it with our other son, or she's not right there. I can't leave him because he'll hurt himself. It's like, so what do I do then? I, well, sometimes I screw up and I yell at him and I then repair later. So I'll just be honest, that happens a lot. But when I'm at my best, what I'm able to do is begin to narrate my own process. I say, Eden, you're really upset, and I'm really upset too. I'm feeling all of these things happen. So I got to take a few deep breaths. And I sit down next to him. I'm like, I got to take a few deep breaths. And I'm doing the practice. I got to take a few deep breaths and I'm plunging my attention down into my feet. I'm reconnecting to the sense of my own body. I put my hand on my chest because that touch is soothing to my animal body. I'm modeling for my guy what to do. I'm like, I got to take a few big breaths here, buddy. I'm feeling my feet on the ground. I'm gonna put my hand right here, and like he's still screaming, but almost always he's beginning to soften. He's noticing that as I do this, I'm bringing him into my space of co-regulation. I'm talking through it. I'm staying in contact with him because if I break contact, he freaks out even more. I just
Mhm.
and I'm just and I'm
Beautiful.
telling you, I could not do this if I didn't also have my formal sitting practice. If I didn't have a way every other day, and during COVID, it was hard and I wasn't getting it. But now, having a way every day or every other day to tap in for 15 minutes when I'm not around someone to find that source of presence and sanity, the more I do that, the more I'm able to find that in the moment. So there's a direct correlate to between those two things. So hopefully that's helpful.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's very helpful. Thank you. And kind of related to that is the second question about, you talked a lot about breath there. And so do you have a specific breath practice to accompany your meditation practice, either when you're working with deep layers or even the ones on the surface? Is it the same? How is it different?
Yeah, it's a great question. I'm not the person, the authority on breath practices. I have many friends who are. I tend to automatically begin any practice and indeed that situation by going right into deep belly breaths. For me, what I need is to extend the exhale. So I do
Yeah.
like mild pranayama. I'm aware of the kind of the autonomic, the breaks and all that. So
Yes.
I will extend my out breaths. I will go into the belly. But I can tell you, there have been times in my practice where I've deliberately, say, begun a formal meditation with 2 or 3 minutes of like, whether it's 4 4 4 4 breathing or holding breath at the bottom, or there's many different practices, and they are very powerful, and they can almost always get me in a state of, depends what practice you're doing, but in general, a state of broad. I mean, if I want to go into a space of more active spiritual inquiry or active mindfulness practice, even 2 3 minutes of that can bring me into a very broad, expanded, stable state. And the breath is really good for that. But in the moment, yeah, I'm breathing as low as I can in my belly, extending my exhales. I'm really trying to regulate that way.
Thank you. I know we have some live questions, and hopefully this last question will kind of relate or maybe be drawn in with those too, but I'm just talking a little bit more about shame. So that might be something that weaves its way in as we receive the live questions.
Mm.
Shame, shame, which I think of as the autoimmune disorder of the mind. It's like the mind eating itself. The snake in your own brain, it's the worst experience I know. Well, right up there with that, violent impulses. And um, yeah, I mean, I think that shame is at the root of so much trauma, if not all of it, arguably, in some way. I'd be really interested to hear what Jan says about it because you're far more the expert. What I can say in my experience is, um, uh, there was a lot of challenge when I was young and a lot of ways in which I internalized a method that, or a message that I was just on balance, not a good person. And no, from no fault, no direct fault of my parents who were loving and did the best they could. It was just the culture and my own issues. And that from that place, this kind of deep alienation from people, fear, suicidality, uh, sense of my own, just the certainty that I didn't have enough to be able to cope. All of those things are related into that. And um, this stuff would break open on retreat and leave me dysregulated for days because I had no one to talk to about it, and my meditation teacher didn't have the interest or wherewithal. That this is the more of the macho old days of practice. So it's
Mm.
been really through working with Jan and then other therapists since then that I've, um, and it involves going to those places, um,
Mm.
letting myself feel those things, but now with a compassionate witness who can reassure me that I'm not repellent to them. And eventually my own inner dialogue really changed. Like I have very little inner critic, inner stuff around that anymore.
Mm.
Um, and I mean, I still get the somatic, the shadowy feeling behind the eyes if I'm doing something a
Mm.
little bit.
Mm.
Oh, I'm a little bit ashamed of myself to be
Mm.
talking about this self-indulgent meditation thing. And there
Right.
in the background, my parents like, it's like, yeah, it's not really a real job. You're just kind of, there's something a bit self-indulgent about you just want to talk about your own stuff all the time. You're selfish. It's still there. I can feel it, but now
Yeah.
I can go, oh, that's a tough thing to hear, little guy. It's okay, man. It's not
Mm.
true, you know.
Yeah. So there's that beautiful part of it. It's kind of working with different parts, working with the critic. We would talk about that with Jenlin. The other part that I think is really important, and it's such a wonderful way of understanding shame, is through the nervous system and the way that we're thinking about it and being able to help people to be with it is to actually, and this sounds bizarre, but remember it's a paradigm shift. So to actually see it, to see shame in the dorsal branch of the vagus, right? The folding in, as we call it in the 7Fs, folding in and shutting down, to actually ask ourselves, what is adaptive about that position, that state in the nervous system? How is it that our body, because we see the body as working for us in
Yes, that's
terms
huge.
of being able to survive. So we're moving right away from these kind of ideas of snakes and evil and it's the worst and it's a disorder, shifting the paradigm into how is this an adaptive feature in the body? And I just think this is wonderful
I
work
love
because
that.
then we can say, oh, like I would say to my kids, the way that, in your family history, the way people stayed safe in that culture was to not to hide, to not stand out. This is in their dad's culture, not mine. I've got the waspy, the dominating white supremacy culture, but in their culture of hiding was and shrouding. That's how you stayed alive. And that kind of dorsal vagal response that you see a lot in trauma survivors is an adaptive feature in a threatened nervous system and in a very maladaptive society, not a maladaptive response, but a maladaptive society. So we shift the whole paradigm. This is an adaptive feature in a maladaptive culture.
Brilliant.
Isn't that amazing? I mean,
It's amazing.
this is how we befriend the body. This
Yeah,
is
well,
how we
honestly,
move.
it's what you're saying is absolutely central to understand healing and trauma. And you're literally nailing the figure ground reversal that's only about 2 years old for me. Which was for the longest time it was like, when will my trauma work end? I'm constantly doing trauma work. I'm just like, I'm over it. And I had this realization, it will never end, in the sense that it doesn't need to go away. It's not about getting rid of my trauma. It's about changing my relationship to it so that I truly have I truly love it. I truly see it as being this beautiful adaptive attempt at a response that I can have
Yeah.
compassion for, and I welcome it. And then it's just so true that it becomes the engine of your compassion, that you're like, now when it comes up, it's like, okay, it's all right. I can feel that. And I see it in other people. And and it becomes this motivator in my teaching. And I don't think of, that is integration. That is what
Yes, it is. And really, truly understanding what Jenlin was getting at, which is, and other people, that we need to really understand how bodies work, how bodies actually work, and that change happens in the body, and that bodies are adaptive to the environment because the whole mandate is around keeping us alive.
Mm.
And so, even with things like illness, with cancer and stuff, from a top-down paradigm, you get these ideas about the war, the war against cancer and how we have to fight it and it's a battle. But if you go into the body and the body's not well, what do we want to do when we're in there? We want to befriend the struggle. We want to be kind to our body, not have a war, but to help our body to heal. If you bring in a war, is that supposed to help the body? That's a state of threat. That's the opposite of what we need in order to
Settle it
heal,
down.
which is the
Defeat the
ventral
enemy.
vagus, right? It's health, growth, and restoration is in that ventral branch of the vagus nerve. Shall we go to Sandra?
Yeah, there's a few hands here. It'd be nice. I see my friend Alina there too. Hey, Alina, what's up?
Oh, good.
Robert's been very patient there too, I know.
Sandra, are you there?
I am. Can you hear me?
We can hear
Yes.
you.
I wanted to, I am so excited to have you two together because I'm a calm member and a person with high sensitivity and ADHD, and I've listened to the Daily Trip a great deal. So yeah, very excited to be here.
Great to meet
So
you.
yeah, I really liked the reminder about concentration, clarity, and equanimity, and I have a Post-it note at my altar that given that I have intergenerational trauma with World War II refugees running from the Russian advance sort of wired into my nervous system, and I identify as ADHD, although I haven't been diagnosed, I really ran sympathetic a lot in my life. And one of the things that I've really been with studying polyvagal pretty intensely for the last 2 years and having a background in counseling, I see all this work as kind of practicing being ventral. Like when I'm sitting on the cushion, I'm kind of practicing being ventral and being in my body. And the one thing in your list of concentration, clarity, and equanimity that I didn't see was the one that's on my post-it, which is friendliness. And I just wanted to kind of get that social engagement system into the conversation, because that to me has been like, that's what my altar's for, right? Is like, I'm like bringing myself back to my senses, and I light the candle that I look at, and I smell the incense, and I hear the little chime, and I feel my yoga mat under me, and like trying to really practice that, because I've been so in this dissociated state of being highly sensitive, nervous system wiring of running from the Russian advance. I've been in that trauma feedback loop, which is such a helpful term. CPTSD is helpful, but I think that trauma feedback loop, it gives me that access to being an active operator of my nervous system. And I've been so grateful for your willingness to be really open. And I'm basically stalking Jan Winhall, I feel like, and I've been, I've been, plugged into you, Jeff. So it's really, I feel like, I'm
nice to bring the worlds together, right, Sandra?
Yeah, it's a lineage kind of thing that now that I know, it's like, oh my God. If you want to expand on that a bit, I'd love it.
Sure. I mean, just comment. Actually, that's my teacher Shinzen. It's constant. He says concentration, clarity, equanimity. I say concentration, clarity, equanimity, and care, because I think it's just as important. So it's a foundation to how I teach, and it's like it almost, it's like the meta skill in a way, because it's the why you're doing it in the first place. So that care is already there as part of an intention, and then it can be directly cultivated using many, many, many practices. You can kind of think of a meditation practice as first, it's sort of like an emptying out. You're seeing what's here, you're being open with it, you're creating more capacity to be with it. It's the sitting in discomfort as well as sitting in comfort, not being attached to it. That capacity grows. But then there's a whole second act, which is, how do you want to come back? How do you want to use your imagination to connect to your values, the more and more compassion, more pride, whatever it is, like, so you directly apply your concentration on the things how you want to come back in the world and what you want to do in the world. And you really need those two pieces. So I see the care as being really central in that. And I'll just say one other quick thing, I'm glad we're bringing up the neurodivergent piece. Like we said in our thing, we talk a little bit more about it. I understand what you're saying about the lineage of the ancestral trauma and how it's affected the ADHD. And for that reason, I try to work individually to figure out what practice is going to work for people. There's almost always something that will. That even with the most every kind of nervous system, whether you're more on the spectrum or more ADHD or OCD or bipolar, there's some window, some resource, some way of approaching it, whether it's more in a movement way, whether it's more a deliberately open awareness, whether it's more like you let people have a kind of wandering movement in their attention, or straight up kind of concentration. Different home bases. There's always some way to recalibrate or customize a practice so it can work with whatever that system is. But there's almost always also a period of exploration of what that's going to be. And that period of exploration is very much connected to, what am I like anyway? We don't know what we're like, right? We kind of know, but it's not until we're kind of listening to other people talk about their sociality or their arousal levels or their emotionality or their sensitivity or their attentional volatility or whatever it is, like all these spectrums of way in which we're organized, that everyone's configured differently. It's very hard to know from the inside what you are like. So to be able to be in community and hear people share, and that's why I'm going to do a retreat for neurodivergent folks specifically. It's going to be part of that. It's like, oh, now I can see why I'm doing those things. Now I can get a better sense of what strategies might help me more. Anyway, I just wanted to kind of bring that in as a general principle, but I appreciate you talking about your ADHD there. And it was great to meet you.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, I'll look for your retreat. Thanks so much for mentioning it.
Sure. Yeah, awesome to meet you, Sandra.
Okay, Terry.
Hi. I just
Hi.
thank you so much. And just trying to get the words for the felt sense of what I feel and its wholeness. And I kind of put a question in the chat. That was the best I could do with words. So, given I thought there might be some time constraints, and it said, "Is the felt sense truth the language of our soul?" Because it feels to me that there is a sense of belonging to myself that creates a safe space, that I felt very disenfranchised from the world and alienated from, and not integrated, but disintegrated between the mind, the heart, the body, spirit outside me, those resources. And I feel like connecting to that deep core truth restores that connection of belonging to myself.
Yeah,
Beautiful.
absolutely. That's the
feels
authentic place,
soul.
Terry.
It feels like soul.
Yeah,
Home base.
home base. Yeah, absolutely.
And to
Yeah.
start with that first, like Peter Levine says, as the aisles of safety, I never created those for myself. It was a missing piece in my lack of secure attachment for one reason or another. And with that, it becomes being blameless, because now I am the solution to touch base with that part of myself, of the life force and creation that's authentic and essential. And from there, I can go to those fragmented places. And but from that myself with
Yeah.
soul, embodied,
Yes.
connected, supported, resourced. And I felt, that seems to be it. And the part that I wanted to know that I heard in your story was about the love you received from Jan for making herself accessible and unconditional to help you. It's such a core thing, because it's when I get the unconditional love, belonging, and I feel valued, that's when the healing came. Being facilitated by outside people that may or may not be a therapist. It may be a
Yes.
cat. It may be a
Yeah.
color. It may be
Often is a cat.
it could be a
Yeah.
dying leaf that I connect to, but that
Yeah.
belonging. So I was curious if you could, because it's something that I have a felt sense of and just articulating, and it's just I'm vibrating on it. So it's a big yes. Anyway. Yeah.
Well, I'm vibrating on it too, and it's a big yes for me, so I could not agree more. I think the key thing for me is to understand that different people find their way into that in different ways, and that it's very mysterious and very creative and very idiosyncratic. And what you're describing as far as a final, as a place to rest, seems to be quite universal, but the way into it is pretty different. And
Yeah.
even something is like, say, even think about a traditional non-dual practice or somewhere where you're just doing pointing out instruction, and when people say, oh, there's a lot of bypassing and this, that, and the other, but what you often hear in that world is once people find that place you're describing, just like you said, then the trauma resolution, when if they want to, is actually much, much quicker because they have a place to stand. My teacher would say you have an Archimedean point outside of the self in which to leverage things happening within the I mean, there's a sort of language issues here around what we mean by these
Yeah.
different
But
things,
I
but
think it's being able to love the unlovable.
that's exactly what Shinzen used to say to me. Our job is to love the unlovable. I agree.
Yeah,
And that
absolutely.
creates the equanimity
Mm-hmm.
in reality.
And one of the words you use there, Terry, that is so important is about accessibility. And this is something that Steve Porges teaches us and demonstrates in his own life all the time, is that we need to be accessible to each other.
Then how
Yeah.
can we make things free and our birthright to healing? Because I'm disenfranchised, and Jan has helped make it more accessible, but I really can't walk. I'm homebound. I don't have access to health insurance right now, and not money while I'm in support and at the bottom and lowest of my low. And I'm a wounded healer. So and I've spent some time on this and had unconditional love from many different things help me with my health and total burnout. But I would really like to create a community that is bottom up, that is from love up, from soul up, that has energy exchanges and love offerings, but that makes it more acceptable. So I think that's going to be the message that I carry from my soul up.
Beautiful. Thanks,
Hallelujah.
Terry. Yeah, I love it.
Take me with you.
Help
We're
me.
going together.
Let's do it.
We're doing it.
We are.
We are doing it. Yeah. Okay. Alina. Hi, Alina.
Hey there. Hi, Jane.
Hi.
Hey, Jeff. Great to see you.
Nice to see you.
Nice hearing from you. Jeff, I felt so much tenderness when you shared that story about your son and just how much it would have meant to me having a parent that could connect that way, that directly in the moment. So thank you for sharing that specificity.
No problem. I don't
Um,
always quite get there, but
totally. A question I had a different question and then I thought this was 2 hours long. So I'm shifting my question a little. A question I have is when working with clients who have experienced so much trauma, and there's like a very clear, there has not been a sense of safety of connecting to the body. I'm wondering if you all have either of you have any go-to tools around connecting to the body in a safe way. One go-to tool that I really like is the pendulum of like finding a spot that's distressing, finding a spot that feels a little neutral and kind of that pendulum. But I'm wondering, yeah, if either of you have any thoughts.
I defer to Jan as the expert here. I have thoughts, but I'd be curious what you'd say.
Well, we go very slowly, and in my book, we start off like I did actually starting off here, never assuming that a person is going to feel safe to connect to their body and wanting to really normalize that. And so we start by looking around the room and seeing if you can just pause and slow things down a little bit and be able to bring concentration and attention into something in the room. Because for a body that's in a flight fight state, that's really scary to do, to slow things down, right? Or for a body that's in a shutdown dorsal state, it's very frightening to become aware of something in the room like that and with really intentionally. So we start with that, with just understanding how we have to go very slowly into noticing. And then in the focusing world, one of the great ways to work with that is called clearing space backwards. I don't know if we have that on my website, Lisa. Do we?
Yes, I'll put the link in. It might be just for community members, but I'll put the link in either way so that you can find it.
Okay. And when we clear space backwards, I think Jeff referred to this a little bit. We would just look at the extremities of the body. So the tip of your nose or your earlobes or the tips of your fingers, just bringing attention to a place in the body that feels all right. So usually, once you are able to kind of connect to body, feeling the tip of your nose is pretty non-threatening, or your earlobes, if you're able to make that from outside starting to come in. And that's a good place to start. And that's a nice little practice that we do that's more like a mindfulness practice because we're not going into the felt sense. Yeah. Or clearing space, which is the first step, which is about taking those things that are in your life that are taking up space and putting each one of them outside of the body. But for being really in that very beginning when it's scary to start to live in your body, clearing space backwards is great. Yeah.
Cool, thank you. Makes
You're
sense.
welcome. Robert, thanks for hanging in there with us.
Well, happy to hang in. So my question is, first of all, I want to say, for me, focusing, and I just want to put it out and see what you think about this, is really about naming and resonating more than whatever Gene steps or Ann Weiss or Cornell steps. And it's really that naming, resonating, and then seeing what happens. And really like sort of focusing on that not yet clear, unclear something. And what I'm really curious about now is the process of naming itself. And that's also going back to a question from before, is what we find in focusing the truth? I don't think it is. In my experience, it's just stories and stories and stories.
Well,
And also what I'm playing with now is really naming things in different ways. So if I think of Shinzen Young's technique and I just name it as like noting, and I'm using now noting and naming interchangeably. So I'm noting, let's say, here out. And that's already in some way a relief, maybe from what's happening in here. But then if I go in here, I mean, there's so many ways to name my experience. I can say I have tension in my head. I can say I have a headache. Or if I really play with it, I can say there's spaciousness. And if I stay long enough with it, it's gonna change my experience of what I find there. So any thoughts you have about that? How names really change the experience?
So many. Well, you're
And
talking like a true meditator. There's so many. First of all, that it's the same skills. So as you know, with Shinzen, it's like you bring your attention into experience, and then the equanimity is like being okay with the not knowing. You're in this sort of bloom of unknowing. It's so generative, and you just stay patient within that. You're not like a truffle pig digging around in there trying to extract something. You're in this state of receptivity, effectively. That's the most powerful. And then you notice something, and now there's different ways of working with it in different some meditation traditions. Like you notice, you see, you allow, it passes through, you stay, you go back to the present. But as you're saying, there's something else. And I guess it's funny you're saying this because I don't even know if I should say this. I just read an interesting book by Dean Radin called The Science of Magic. And it's a lot about intention. And it's about the power of intention within subjective experience in particular to create changes and shifts and organize things. And that's the naming, you know. And I've found that something about the act of naming the thing that you're seeing, whatever it is, and of course you could see infinite things. So this is the thing that's interesting. Well, what are you going to name? Because the act of naming it concretizes it in some way. It makes it more real. And this is the nature of concentration. You focus on a feeling of neurotic fear, and you're doing it with a little bit of attachment, and then the neurotic fear just grows and grows and grows, you know, unless you're really clean in the signal of how you're paying attention. Similarly, but if you pay attention to a feeling of compassion and you get absorbed in it, it'll expand, expand, expand everywhere. Similarly, if you put your attention onto stillness, broadness, space, that becomes the dominating quality. That becomes the reality you're rebuilding in your experience. So really, really important to understand, to go earlier frame, that there is both an emptying out that's happening and a rebuilding that's happening. And I think that naming piece is sort of central to it, but it's not neutral. You know, it's embedded, it's infused with your values and your understandings of what it is you want to, or it should be infused with what it is that you want to. If you think you're just objectively naming what's true in there, I don't think that's accurate. There is no objective take on what's in there. It's always, there's an interaction. Everything's just subjective. And so your own looking is changing what's there. And so choose, like, choose what you want to name is what I would say.
well, then the follow-up question would be like, if I teach focusing, should I tell people that how they are naming something is already in some way conditioned? Like to see something as a problem or to see something in a certain way, isn't
It's a
that
good
already,
question.
isn't that already conditioning?
I think we would just go back to the body. Focusing isn't just about naming and releasing. It's about coming back, I guess in step 3 of the handle would be where we would be kind of naming that felt sense or the qualities of that. But what we're looking for in focusing is coming back into the body and using that sense of what happens in the body with the felt shift. And this is where the nervous system piece comes in. So what is true or authentic is what creates the felt shift into ventral energy, into a sense of safety and aha, that's it. It's that feeling of physical release that Gendlin saw in the body, which is what as a polyvagal person, I realized, well, that's a shift into ventral energy. So that's the most
Yeah.
important piece in focusing. And Jenlin said this too. It's not just me. He said the shift is the most important aspect because that's what he saw in the research that he did. And when you think about it from the nervous system, it makes perfect sense. It's like, of course, it's the most important piece because when we come into that feeling of like, yes, that's what it is. That's what I've been feeling, or that's what's going on that I haven't been telling myself directly. That is that really listening to the
Yeah.
wisdom of the body.
Yeah. And I could say, I'd also add that you could infuse a kind of don't know mind in it. You don't have to understand it. You don't
No.
have to, and you'll never have an
And you often
understanding
don't.
that's broad enough. Yeah, like I often have been like, I just sort of surrender to the mystery of my practice. I know I'm highlighting something that I could be highlighting something else. I could be bringing this into it. I'll never be
Yeah.
perfect. I'll never have such a clean record in the way I'm approaching all of this that every part of it is knowable. There's something about it that's bigger than me, much bigger than me.
And
So,
also continues on,
yeah,
right, Jeff? It
yeah,
just keeps continuing
exactly.
on as you live your life. More about it comes. And Jenna would say that too. He'd say it's so interesting how nothing about the actual situation has changed, but how I'm responding to that has changed.
Yeah. And we're always going
It's
to get hung up somewhere. We always get a hang up about some
yeah,
way in which we're going into
little
it. And
sticky thing.
that's something else you can notice. And I could say, it's like, it's not actually a problem. They're never a problem.
Yeah,
They're always a problem more in the mind or we have a
yeah.
conviction of that this is a thing. And anyway,
We need to stop because I'm really conscious of,
you
Lisa's time here with us and moderating and managing my life and all that stuff that she does so well. So, Katerina, email me with your query if you want. But thank you so much. I loved this. It's one of my favorite Embodied Dialogues podcasts I've done. Just wonderful to be with you. And I'll be with you in 2 weeks. So everybody come and find us again.
we're going to do a mind bod pod. Oh, you're doing this embodied things in 2 weeks, or are you talking about with
No,
me?
no, I mean with you. I'll be with
Yeah,
you.
we'll do it in 2 weeks, but we record it. It's not
Yeah.
live, so people will
Yeah,
hear it
yeah.
later. Yeah,
So they'll
amazing to
see
see
it
everyone.
later.
Thanks to all my community who came out. I
Yeah.
see a lot of my familiar friends and a lot of old friends, and was happy to see
Yeah.
Jeffrey there wherever he was.
Yeah, yeah.
And
Great.
I see Brooke and I see Kelly and Leanne and everybody, and great to hang out. Thank you for
Yeah.
you got me
Thanks,
thinking about some stuff
everybody.
there, Robert. Lena, great to see you.
Yeah.
Okay, and Rihanna,
Wonderful.
I see you there, Rhiannon. Hi. Yeah, and Melanie, what's up, Melanie?
This is social engagement.
Yeah, you're all popping in here now. These are some of
Yeah.
the
And
views I
everybody
didn't
can
see.
unmute too and say
Yeah,
goodbye,
unmute and say
and you're
goodbye.
welcome
Yeah.
to.
Yeah.
Thanks so much.
Thanks,
This was
Thank
everybody.
you, Jan and
wonderful.
Jeff.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye,
Okay.
everyone.
So much.
Bye
Bye,
bye.
Thanks,
everybody.
everyone.
Bye.
Nice
Thank
to
you,
see you.
Jeff. Thank you, Jen.
Thank you so much.